How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to We the Fandom. If you're new here, thanks for checking out the channel, and I hope you stick around. Today, we're talking about Ultimate Universe issue number 1, written by Deniz Camp and illustrated by Juan Frigeri. We finally learn what happened to Tony Stark in the Ultimates at the end of Ultimate Universe issue number 1, which came out all the way back in November of 2023, as well as what led to the creation of Spider-Man, which we first saw in January of this year. Now, before we get into the story, I wanted to give a quick timetable of the continuity so far. So, Ultimate Invasion issue number 4, Howard Stark and Doctor Doom, who is the Reed Richards of this universe, locked the Maker, an alternate Reed Richards, into his own city, locking the entire city in time. 2 weeks after that, the events of Ultimate Universe issue number 1 take place, where Tony and Doom rescue Thor, Sif joins the group, and they obtain the frozen Captain America as well as a single container of catalysts for the would-be superheroes of this world. At the end of Ultimate Universe, Captain Britain stabs Thor with a magic blade, which causes him an injury that doesn't heal as quickly as it should, and the Maker's Council uses a Stark satellite to demolish a block of Manhattan, framing Tony Stark and the Ultimates for terrorism, while also seemingly killing him. Of course, Tony and the Ultimates escape 6 months into the future, where they hope by that this time the Earth has been filled with superheroes. And so at the beginning of the Ultimates, Tony and Doom lay out the current timeline and state that they have 18 months until the Maker escapes the city. That was basically the time that was input on the locking mechanism for the city. I mean, it was more than that, but at this point, they have 18 months left until the Maker escapes. And with an injured Thor, an unthawed Captain America, and only a single container of catalysts, the two try and figure out what they're going to do moving forward and decide to use the Immortus engine, which allows them to travel through time, send origin boxes to various people, which you see in Ultimate Spider-Man issue number 1, and hope that they accept their role as a superhero, and hopefully a secret resistance of superheroes builds up so that by the time that the Ultimates re-enter the world, that there is a group of people out there who will help defeat the Maker. And while Tony does manage to unthaw Captain America and create the origin devices and send them back in time, it does not turn out the way they thought it would. As he says, only a couple of the heroes took. One of them is Spider-Man. The other one, I'm not sure if it's Captain Marvel because she's engulfed in an explosion, and I'm not sure if she died or if that was just her gaining her powers, as they mentioned that a number of unnamed characters died as a result of basically superpower suicide, so they weren't ready for their powers and they died accidental deaths. And then there was other unnamed characters that simply rejected the role that was given to them, although one of them is shown as Hawkeye, who threw his suit in the trash. It took 7 days for Stark and Doom to create the origin boxes and unthaw Captain America, and this was known as the Ultimates 1.0 plan. This failed, and so they decided not to use time travel anymore. Rather, they would take this opportunity to establish themselves in the world and basically let everyone know that they're still alive. And this is where Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne come in. In this universe, Hank and Jan are happily married, well, semi-happily married, and they are, funnily enough, exterminators. They are in no way currently connected to science or Pym particles, but that all changes when they are met with the Ultimates. And the Ultimates basically show up and say, hey, we gave you your origin box. Why didn't you guys respond or accept or do anything with it? And it's revealed that Hank knew about the origin box that he received 6 months prior, but he didn't tell Jan about it because within the origin box were files on his alternate 616 self and the history of that character, to include the time that he beat his wife Jan, as well as creating Ultron. And so he saw that and he's like, well, my life is kind of pathetic now, but this guy sounds a lot worse and I don't want to become him. And so he basically kept the origin box hidden. But the Ultimates are out in the open, and Captain Britain, along with his group known as the Black Crusade, show up in public to defeat the Ultimates, who they brand as terrorists, and Hank and Jan are caught up in the fight. Now, Jan takes to the powers instantly, whereas Hank takes some motivating by Captain America, as well as seeing his wife having to deal with the fight. And so the whole thing ends with Hank becoming Giant Man and basically stomping on Captain Britain, leaving a footprint that has the logo for the current Ultimate Universe, and basically the establishment of the Ultimates. The only person missing here that reflects the original classic Avengers team would be the Hulk. But of course, he's technically a villain as part of the Maker's Council. This take on Hank Pym is certainly an interesting one because, in a way, he's more of a loser than his 616 counterpart, but he also doesn't have all that baggage. but I'm really curious about what he's going to add to the team going forward because the way that the maker got to him is by giving him some sort of unexplained brain trauma, which to me implies that he doesn't have the scientific acumen that would have led to him discovering Pym particles. And being a scientist is like the whole point of Hank Pym and Ant-Man. Like, sure, he does turn giant and smash stuff, and he does turn small and get into little places and stuff, but he has always been a scientist. In fact, at one point, they made Hank Pym Earth's scientist supreme in the 616 universe, which was kind of the science equivalent to the Sorcerer Supreme that Doctor Strange is. And sure, they already have Tony Stark and Doom, who are geniuses. And so I wonder if leaving the science out of Hank Pym's character kind of removes some of that baggage because he can be a more kind of simple superhero and he's also not going to be in danger of creating Ultron unless the designs for Ultron or something were like part of the catalyst, part of the origin box he received. This version of Captain Britain, on the other hand, is a major dick. And I know he is technically a villain and he's an alternate version of the character, but I think it's because he's a Frenchman that he literally has zero respect for British traditions. And that means within the Marvel Universe, the very real magical aspects of British history, to include Otherworld, to include the Holy Grail and Excalibur and the Lady of the Lake. He basically has perverted all of that history, all of that mythology in the role of Captain Britain. So I was glad to see him stomped by Hank Pym. I don't know if it's going to be a theme that is taken all the way to the end of the last issue of the Ultimates, but issue 1 starts as it's narrated by Tony Stark as a letter to Howard, much in the same way that the Ultimate Invasion series was a letter from Howard to Tony Stark, or at least I think the last issue was. And the last page of issue 1 of Ultimates is even a draft of Tony's letter to Howard, which is much less forgiving towards his father and his actions leading up to the events of Ultimate Invasion than the narration is. There is one major plot hole I saw, and feel free to correct me or add something into the comments, because maybe I'm just missing something. But in the beginning of the story, Tony says, we can use the Immortus engine to travel through time. Why don't we just go back to before the Maker started all this and basically prevent him from doing any of that? And Doom says that there's basically a firewall because of the lock that they placed on the city, which doesn't allow them to go past 6 months in time. What's interesting about that is that that's just the time that they first jumped into the future, but that didn't happen immediately after the city was locked in time. Tony and Doom were able to accomplish some stuff like rescuing Thor in the events of Ultimate Universe, and more importantly, they were able to find and transport the frozen Captain America. Now, the non-existence of Captain America was revealed in issue 2 of Ultimate Invasion as something that the maker was surprised but also happy about, that basically there was never an original hero in this universe. But to me, issue 4 of Ultimate Invasion, where Tony and Doom found Captain America and took him, to me implied that they went back before the maker got there and took Captain America, and that's why the maker didn't see him. There's basically just a hole in the ice because Doom and Stark had already removed him. So how is it that after they locked the city in time, that they were able to travel all the way back to before the Maker got there and steal Captain America, but now they can't go back to before 6 months? Doesn't make any sense to me. Again, feel free to add something in the comments. Am I missing something? Is this just a huge continuity error? I thought Jonathan Hickman was going to be writing Ultimates, but he's not. It's Deniz Camp. I'm not sure how long that person is writing it, but yeah, this seems like a huge plot hole. And I like the idea that they're not allowing themselves, the writers, to use time and the Immortus engine as kind of a MacGuffin. So they can't, if they write themselves into a corner, they have to actually put some effort into the story and write their way out of it rather than just say, oh, we can just use time and go back and change everything. I like that they put that limitation on themselves, but it also introduces this plot hole. So I'm curious to see if they actually figure out a way to reconcile that or something going forward. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Overall, I enjoyed the first issue, and what I appreciated the most is that it feels like a classic first issue of Avengers. It feels like a classic team-up book, rather than the try-hard Ultimates issue number 1 from the original run in, 2000, 2001. where they were just trying to prove how edgy they could be and how different the, at the time, modern Avengers could be from the classic ones. This didn't feel like that at all. And I hope they're able to maintain that sort of presence in these stories, at least for the Ultimates. They can do other things with the other characters, but I think the Ultimates in this universe need to be different. I think they need to be less, government militaristic and more like classic heroes, even though they are in an even more, up to date modern age than the original Ultimates were. But I'm looking forward to seeing what Deniz Camp has going forward. And hopefully, Jonathan Hickman still has some oversight over the universe. And I'd love to see him come in and write a story arc or two down the line. Let me know what you guys think about this issue 1 in the comments section below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like and subscribe button, as well as the notification bell so you don't miss out on the next video. Thanks for watching.